all the time.
We are family.
Outstanding effort again.
We're busting ours to kick yours.
That's big time.
-15.
Respect all, fear none.
Oh, did he belt that one?
Intensity is not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen, joined by Matt Bonaparte. We were almost joined by Kevin Brown, hence the mics. But it's just us today.
Just
we
us.
still hang out. Matt, you were recently... we've got to bring this up off the top because it's one of the crazier things that I've heard you say in the last 20 minutes. You said before we came on here that you were recently added to a group chat of all Matts.
Yeah.
And you
That's
discussed two things. What are those two things?
I don't discuss any of these things.
Oh, you don't?
I don't discuss anything, all right? I was just added to 450 other Matts.
450
They discussed two
Matts.
things in there. Gambling and how much they hate mics.
They don't like mics.
They don't like mics, all right? I was shook.
They would
My
not.
father is a mic.
Your father's a mic.
So I was like, I don't know. I mean, what?
He has not contributed to the eternal war between Matts and Mikes.
No, I actually called him
He has
last
promoted
night.
neutrality.
I called him to leak the info to him. I was like, you guys should start a defense over there in the mics.
Yeah.
Because
well,
the Mats
somebody
are
has
coming.
to. The Mats are they're building numbers and they are launching an offensive. It really begs the question of what other names have really just a lot of beef with another very specific names. We were talking.
I mean, this one's clear.
This one is clear.
Brandon and Brendan.
Yeah.
That one's obvious.
That
you
one
guys
is
have
obvious.
been jawing for a long time.
Yeah. I haven't brought it up with Brandon Hyde, but I might have to at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Brendans, of course, you get mistaken for Brandons very often.
All the
That's
time.
got to hurt for you.
That was a plight in middle school. I mean, it was tough. Every teacher, first day, Brendan or Brandon? It was Brendan every time.
Read it.
Didn't change it. It was still Brendan. Anyway, we've got Orioles baseball to discuss. Obviously, the Orioles fall short in the ALDS, swept in 3 games by the Texas Rangers. We're not going to break down Game 3 too awful much. Look, the Rangers are a buzzsaw right now. They have
They're
won
really good.
7 consecutive games to begin the 2023 playoffs. That is almost a record. It is up there with the 2014 Kansas City Royals, who won 8 games in a row to begin that postseason. And, of course, the Orioles just decide to run into both of those teams.
Yes.
Because why don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
the Orioles win 101 games, run into a Rangers team that is close to tying the Royals record. And then in 2014, when they won 96 games, they run into the Royals, who have the record.
Yes.
Not great.
Yeah, no, it's tough.
Yeah,
is what it
tough
is.
luck.
This Rangers team is really good. And I think we knew that. But, you know, the Orioles are really good, too. It's just that the Rangers are... People are bringing up this postseason, I feel like, more than any other MLB postseason, about the whole first seed with the bye is hurting teams because the Braves went down, the Dodgers went down, Astros are down 2-0, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So
A lot of the blah, blah, blahs.
yeah. So I don't know if that actually has any merit, but a lot of people are throwing out the muscle memory. They were winning every day. They're playing every day, and then they took a week off. They came back, and it wasn't the same. I don't know if you feel like that has any merit. I kind of don't.
I don't think it has as much merit as people are trying to make it out to be.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde both kind of said, like, we're not going to blame a week off for losing in the postseason and getting swept by the Texas Rangers. Brandon Hyde said kind of jokingly, like, it certainly didn't help that we had a week off, but there definitely were guys on this team, too, that could have used a few days off. I mean, you had some injuries down the stretch,
Yeah.
guys like Cedric Mullins, who were trying to get healthy. So I'm not going to sit here and say that having a week off is the reason that the Orioles lost, and the Orioles aren't either.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, they said that it didn't help, but it's kind of built to help. So should they not do it in the future? Like, it's a really weird thing, because obviously you'd think that the first instinct is that the break is going to help. You know, you get off your tired legs, the arms get to rest for a couple of days, the bullpen's going to be fresh going in, this, that, and the other thing. You're going to throw your best starter game one, but it hurts in the end. But
yeah, the only suggestion that I've really heard is maybe you give the wild card team one less day off than they had before.
Well, I think also with the wild card being a series now, it's a little bit different. When it was just one game, it was
and every wild
bang.
card series was a sweep this
Yeah.
year. So it gave the wild card team
I believe-
another day off.
Yeah. In the history of wild card series, I think only one of them hasn't been a sweep.
Yeah.
Is a stat I saw.
That's kind of crazy.
Just make it a game.
Look, the playoff format is what it's going to be. The Orioles lost in the ALDS. That's the reality here. We are posing the question today of whether or not the 2023 season was a success. And that is the question that a lot of Orioles fans have had, a lot of Orioles writers have been contributing to over the last week or so. We have taken the week to digest, to take a step back from kind of the sting of losing Game 3 of the ALDS. And we're going to take a look at kind of the season as a whole. What didn't go as well as you had hoped? What went better than expected? We're going to start to preview some storylines for the offseason that we are going to break down further in depth in shows in the weeks to come. We're going to kind of preview that a little bit. I would say just overall to start before we get into kind of what didn't go well in the season, because there's a lot fewer points that we are going to hit on that front about what didn't go well. Overall, just answering the question off the top, I think it is unequivocally a successful season. Obviously, given the context of the playoffs, here's how I kind of view the end of the season here. If somebody had told you at the beginning of the year that the Orioles lost in the ALDS, before the season, you probably would have went, that's probably a successful season because the Orioles, A, made the playoffs. B, at that point, you probably would have assumed that they were a wild card team. Not many people gave them a chance in the AL East. I mean, this team included said it's going to be a real uphill battle to win the AL East. So if you told me that they lost in the ALDS, I'd probably say that's great on a few fronts. A, they made the playoffs. B, they probably won a wild card series. And an ALDS appearance is a really nice step in the right direction. Obviously, getting swept in the ALDS, given the context of the fact that you won 101 games, you were the number one seed in the American League, at that point it becomes disappointing, but you have to take yourself back to where we were before the season, and if you had said the Orioles lost in the ALDS, I would have told you that was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, expectations are everything at the end of the day. And to your point, the expectation going into the year was not that the Orioles were going to win 101 games. So
no, you were looking for a playoff berth.
Exactly. That was the goal if they could get that. And I think a lot of fans out there thought there was even an opportunity or a chance that they'd take a step back this season, which obviously they did not, and they went out and won 101 games. So everybody's expectations as far as I'm concerned with their regular season play. Obviously, you don't want to get swept in the ALD. When you take the big pick, season was absolutely a success for Baltimore fans. Because can do
right. So really well this year. We'll start list.
Yeah.
Then the what went well is the playoffs. Getting swept in the ALDS is not the result of one seed in the American League, but we just talked about kind of the context of it. And if you told me that before the season, I consider it a win. In the playoffs themselves, your struggles, Rutschman on the mound as well. Big part of this team, and it's a very small sample size. You have 3 games out of Adley Rutschman and Cedric Mullins and just 1 start out of Grayson Rodriguez. Small sample size. I'm not reading all that those guys didn't deliver as much as you were hoping in the ALDS.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the guys you've relied on all year to still be capable of being reliable. And, that's what you want. But at the same time, those guys are veteran. But I think is into that. But about some guys on this team really struggled right at the end of the season, but
They have spot playoff is a defense of back every two fix in hard this talk Joe so it's or
for your go.
Yeah.
Shot came up. In the reliable when they were on the field. Made, and like you said, we'll probably have plenty of podcasts about. But for now, value Westberg over those guys.
yeah. In triple, like Joey, be a conversation. What you pitchers? It's something like that. The two
like you said, interest of out are not it's a when and
and he's quickly and coming a season is and pen arm give off like or
maybe really good so I come
we're the thing need game 5 vision. Thank you. Been go playoff. Not
road with 100 in the was
play tell in the in a
again and they that you talk
here has been for always what in 20 join your team. Led by two superstars in Gun Rookie of the Year. Put on a and picture in from Ace. Pitcher. You
and then he's definitely he's is to do does with but so I don't really know what that is. So, and I'm not necessarily sure that Elias does at this moment either.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. But like you said, they've got two superstars that they grew. And they've got Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish, who both continue.
Going to be a whole other shit. That trade able to excellent pitch down and if the big system is about now Kyle this guy one their starters of them that you could look at and say you're which is not something you could say before the season.
Yeah. That season start. It's a will he goes he does for the Orioles season. The world in which home runs are so shout out to Bradish.
And Grayson Rodriguez, of course, stumbling in the playoffs a little bit, but he looked awesome since he came back from Norfolk in July. Had a 2.58 ERA in 13 games.
Yeah. In July. Back eventually got
on kind of Orioles with well out of had with was player of Henderson.
They were
the Orioles, I would imagine, are going to continue. Maybe they don't bring in a Gibson and a Frazier because you don't want to have a logjam here and there, but for to help out this
in a situation this year where they offer expertise not that only a veteran can, they also given with guys who you bring in to be that veteran presence. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn, Aaron Hicks, they were absolutely fantastic in the lineup. Kyle Gibson gave you so many quality starts, upward towards 20. So much success from those guys, not only with the veteran presence, but also with their performance.
Those guys were brought in either via trade in the case of James McCann or on pretty decently sized contracts in the case of Gibson and Adam Frazier. Kyle Gibson signs for $10 billion. You know, this is just how in the rough again. He does it. And his team in the Orioles front office, talents that can contribute. The Orioles be without these guys. No, and Danny Coulomb.
Shout out my boy Danny.
Were all acquisitions that we just didn't make very much in this season without those four guys.
I don't think that, especially with Felix going down, the performance of Coulomb and Cano down the stretch was absolutely crucial.
Injury were your two most reliable relievers down the stretch.
I don't even know if
DL
there's
Hall
an
right
argument
in that conversation,
Yeah.
but it was Coulomb and Cano.
And how about Ryan Mountcastle going down with vertigo halfway through the year? And
there was Ryan O'Hearn.
Ryan O'Hearn came in and said, don't worry about it.
Yep.
I got you covered.
Got it.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Those guys were so valuable with what they did. O'Hearn just mashing the entire year. You put him in a big for a really, really long time. And he was a Cy Young candidate when he did, but he got picked up by two really, really reliable guys.
Ryan O'Hearn was acquired from the Kansas City Royals.
They gave up on him.
Ryan O'Hearn was, I think, DFA'd by the Orioles in the offseason.
Really?
They just wanted to find a way to keep him in the organization. He was in the discussion in spring training as to who would be the backup first baseman on this team. Lewin Diaz ends up spending the entire season in AAA Norfolk, and Franchi Cordero ends up going to the Yankees, having 2 or 3 outstanding weeks.
Remember the Franchi Cordero conversations?
Oh, I remember the Franchi Cordero conversations. Yeah, where the Orioles looked like fools for a week for not keeping Franchi Cordero, and then Ryan O'Hearn just posted. Cordero is. He was good for a little stretch there. Against right. He played. It was. If it.
For
The end
tough,
of the season
man.
for O'Hearn, but he was unbelievable. And to lose Ryan Mountcastle mid-season with you lost Cedric Mullins in the middle of this season too, and Aaron Hicks came in, and you still didn't skip a beat.
Yep.
Aaron Hicks, because he just wasn't playing very well in New York, gets a change of scenery. It's just one of the four Orioles to have an OPS over 800.
Guy who came up in big spots.
Yeah.
Then, like you said, when Mullins went down, who was and a switch hitting bat.
Experience that this team
Yeah, and he was really good
had
in the
this.
playoffs.
And it showed. Game 2 in the Jorge Lopez trade last year, turns into one of the best relievers in baseball without Yennier Cano. And Danny Coulomb trade in spring training.
Yeah.
And then just was on the roster, I maybe 2 minutes on the roster. He was fine. More, and then he was great.
He was meeting expectations in Danny Coulomb.
Yeah.
I got to say, I remember huge, and you were like, eh.
Yeah, you did. You were kind of on the Danny Coulomb trade.
I called Coulomb
for no apparent reason either.
I had my reasons.
He was solid. He was solid.
That's my guy, Danny.
Look, if you looked at me and said that Ryan and Coulomb were going to be big contributors to the Orioles this year, you're looking at me.
Danny Coulomb was going to be good. That's a.
You said he was going to be solid. I don't know about this sort of stretch.
All right.
Bias, I'm sure, is probably going to do it again. Anything of, and then they're going to have an 8. I don't know why we ever questioned him.
He's in a dangerous situation.
Anybody that's a waiver claim is going to be like all-star.
Yeah, they're good. So, different world we're living in.
I mean, like Jacob Webb, same thing. He was excellent down the stretch. I know he had a tough playoffs, but like Jacob Webb. Ben McDonald started calling him every game Jacob Webb because he was just out there.
Brutal.
Tough. Overall takeaways was a very our internet connection seed in the American League to be season. That is now able to pit and say, hey, I mean, think about the case to pitchers at this point. We're going to talk about it down the stretch. I think looking at a frontline starting pitcher in this free agent market, you can now go to a frontline starting pitcher and say, hey, not only does Camden Yards not have one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks in baseball anymore, but we just won 101 games, and we're the 1 seed in the American League, and we just need a few pieces here and there to push us over the top to be a World Series contender.
Yeah.
You say, look, we have Gunnar Henderson, we have Adley Rutschman, we have the best farm system in baseball. Jackson Holliday is going to be on this team at some point next year. Everything is trending in the right direction. So why, as a free agent, would you not want to come?
Everybody raves about in terms of how he manages the starting rotation as well as the bullpen. To go to a team that employs a catcher that nobody has a single bad thing to say about.
Yeah.
And the Orioles have that in Adley Rutschman. And James McCann is also fantastic as the backup. So I think that is also huge, on top of having actually pitching to righties with the wall in left field. Throw it over the hump.
Yeah, you're really happy throwing to either Adley Rutschman or James McCann this season. That's going to continue to be the case. That's going to be my biggest offseason story. Free agency, are they going to make some moves that could potentially push them from, a play caliber team? Because I think they are a few moves away from being at that spot. Another offseason storyline is the same offseason storyline that it feels like we have had for years now. It is the logjam of prospects. I mentioned it with Jorge Mateo and Ramon Arias. Are we going to see guys like Joey Ortiz and Connor Norby potentially fill the outfield? You have Colton Cowser, who has done nothing but produce in AAA Norfolk. He struggled a little bit in his time in the bigs, but Colton Cowser is still a top 15 prospect in baseball, and I expect Colton Cowser to be fighting for an opening day roster spot here. Heston Kjerstad.
I was about to say Kjerstad as well.
I would expect the same thing, to be fighting for an opening day roster spot. Mike Elias left the door open for Jackson Holliday being on this opening day roster. Hasn't gotten a ton of experience at AAA Norfolk, but it doesn't really look like he needs it.
I was about to say, if anybody doesn't need experience, it's that guy.
Yeah.
See the MLB on opening day.
Could be here at some point almost certainly will be here at some point next season. He will be fighting for an opening day roster spot because he has a good amount of experience. McDermott, Cade Povich. What are we going to see out of Seth Johnson?
Trace Bright, my guy.
Trace Bright is moving up the ranks. At Seth Johnson, Chase McDermott, Cade Povich, three names that I'm looking at as guys that could potentially be in the rotation at some point in 2024. So the logjam of prospects is once again going to be really interesting because you have veteran players and continue to contribute. Jorge Mateo and Ramon Arias have pretty defined roles at this point. So what are you going to do with the AAA guys that are knocking at the door? And then, on some smaller offseason keys, who could they target in trades potentially if you do look to offload some veteran guys to make room for prospects, or maybe you look to offload prospects to get veteran guys. We'll talk about some trades down the stretch. The Orioles have a ton that, there's some no-brainers like Anthony Santos. And there are some guys that are, fringe 26-man roster players, guys like Ryan McKenna, who is arbitration eligible. That's going to be a big discussion as well. There are going to be a lot of offseason storylines, and make sure you're tuning into the Bird's Nest because we're going to be breaking all of them. A lot of reasons to be excited. I think we're going to have a lot of fun shows here where we're going to be talking about some really encouraging stuff for 2024.
Absolutely. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
Should be a fun offseason.
And we're going to do our, traditional fun off-season shows too. Myself and Paul Mancano kind of started the tradition of doing some fantasy drafts in the off-season, having a special fantasy draft show. We're going to be tossing around some ideas for what fantasy draft we could be doing this off-season. If you have any ideas for an Orioles fantasy draft, please let us know in the comments. I think our last fantasy draft was suggestion. A few ideas swirling around in the noggin. Maybe an all Orioles draft.
I'm in.
As guys that, the organization
that seems
has
a little
drafted.
bit meta.
And off-season episodes for you, so make sure you are tuning in to the Bird's Nest all off-season long, hopefully with some better internet connection down the stretch. Make sure you tune in to the Bird's Nest for all of your off-season needs. We will be live every Wednesday, most Wednesdays, maybe except for the holidays, at 11 a.m. on YouTube and Facebook, or you can catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts or digital shows, you can find us. Big thank you to Amy Jennings behind the scenes for producing this one. For Matt Bonaparte, I'm Brandon Mortensen.